Most entry-level developers suck at using LinkedIn. They either see it as another job board, just spamming the easy apply button, or they similarly see a job opening and just spam their recruiters asking for work. And don't get me started on those who treat LinkedIn like a dating app.
No, God, please, no, no!
LinkedIn is so much more than that. LinkedIn boasts over 1 billion members in 200 countries worldwide, making it an amazing venue to build and strengthen a real professional network. But Eric, I don't have time to build a network. It takes too long. You're wrong. Today, I've brought on Andrew Herman, a recently hired junior software engineer who never applied to a job, but got hired anyway before he even graduated from his bootcamp because of the relationships he built on LinkedIn. So let's hear how he used LinkedIn to make it happen. All right, Andrew. So a lot of new developers spend most of their time bulk applying to jobs, but you did something a little different. Can you talk about all the work you put into your LinkedIn and how that played out for you?
Yeah. My strategy to get a job, believe it or not, was not really to apply to a lot of jobs. I was trying to use networking and LinkedIn, and leverage my previous experience to make connections that ultimately would kind of lead to those roles. So during my time, where I was kind of actively looking for work, I gained 264 LinkedIn connections, 123 individual people I messaged on LinkedIn. I had about 20 different intro calls with different developers or engineers. And then ultimately that's kind of what led me to accepting the offer that I did.
And to clarify, since your focus was so heavily on networking, how many direct applications did you submit during that time frame?
To be honest, I mean, I could count it on my one hand. Uh,
Yeah, that's what I imagine. So I just want to compare and contrast that for a little bit, just for the listeners here, because a lot of times I hear people talking about applying to 500, 600, or 1,000 different openings before they get the response in their first role. Uh, and people get shy away from networking. Yeah, it was really just, you said, a little over 100 people that you actually did direct message and communicate with, which is, from a numbers comparison perspective, a lot less if you think of instead only sending 100 something direct applications out.
yeah.
So so networking doesn't have to take a long time, which people get afraid of.
Yeah. I think it's more efficient than just, like you said, 1,000 applications, 500 applications. I really would only send over my information, like not through a direct application link. I would just like send it to a connection or lead I had at the company. So like technically I filled out 0 official job applications.
Yeah. You're a legend, my friend. So what or how did you identify people that would be open to talking to you?
Yeah. So one of the best advice that I've gotten for job searching is, don't ask for a job, ask for advice. Um, and I think that also just being like a genuinely curious person, I enjoy kind of getting to know people and any tips and tricks that they may have. Um, so what I did is, like, my previous life, I worked in finance for 3 years. So I found like I made a big list of companies, that were financial related that I thought it'd be really cool to work at. And then I found those companies on LinkedIn. And from there, you can see all the employees at each company. So I would filter out for software engineers, developers, product managers. And then I would have a list of about 10 different people at each company. Another thing you can do is you can filter by school. So like if anyone has a college degree, you can try to find alumni at that company. Um, and then from there, I would send connection requests to about 10 different employees. And then the ones that came back, I would message them and just say, hey, my name is Andrew. Here's what I did previously. Here's what I'm trying to do. And then it's pretty important to always end with the message with an ask. So I would always ask, like, hey, I'd love to grab 15 minutes of your time just to hear some advice on my next career steps. Or, hey, I'd love to grab 15 minutes of your time to hear more about your experience doing this at company X.
Gotcha. So you wouldn't put all of your eggs in one basket and trying to talk to a recruiter. You would try to reach out specifically to people that were in the software development team or space. Probably not all 10 responded to you, but kind of what was your like response rate to you reaching out like that?
Pretty low. So like I use the same method to get into my previous finance roles. And I think finance people are more apt to like hop on the phone to have a conversation. Whereas developers are like, they either haven't checked their LinkedIn or in 3 years, or they don't want to talk to me. Um, so the response rate was low, like probably like
But it did ultimately work,
it did
right?
ultimately work. So it's like, you just have to find those one or two leads that ultimately will work out. Um, One book that I kind of took some tips from is called The 2 Hour Job Search by Steve Dalton. And he kind of has this idea where he puts people in your network into three categories. I think it's kind of maybe an extreme way to do it, but he says that each person is either a curmudgeon, an obligate, or a booster. And he says curmudgeons are like, they don't have any interest in helping you find a job. So they'll not respond, ignore you. Um, Obligates, he says, are people that like uh, feel some sort of obligation or guilt to kind of help you in your search, but they don't really want to. So a lot of times that ends in people like flaking out or saying they'll pass on your resume and never doing it. Um, so those are actually kind of worse than the people that just deny you up front.
They waste your time.
Exactly. It takes longer to realize that it's wasting your time. But the third category is boosters. And these are people that like love their job. They want to help you, want to help people get into the industry. So ultimately, I found a couple of those. And like once I found people that were like that and wanted to help me, I put in tons of effort.
So how did you identify those ahead of time, or is that just more of you sent out these communications, you kind of slowly figure out who's who?
Yeah, that's like, you can't really screen for that, unfortunately. Maybe LinkedIn should add that
Mhm.
feature. But ultimately it's like you get on the phone with people, and if someone's willing to chat with you, give you advice, like already that's a good sign. But then there's also kind of other signs, like if they're enthusiastic to help you or they want to refer you to other people at their company, then that's a really good sign too.
So let's pull the thread a little bit on the direct chain of events that led to the role that you had now. So to talk specifically, what did what was the impetus of that conversation, and walk me through kind of the interview process, or who referred you to what, blah blah blah.
Yeah. So actually, like, right after I left my job, I had like 2 weeks before I started Tech Elevator. So I actually started networking then. So that's like one of the biggest things that I learned is like, it's never too early. Cause I was doing this for 16, 17 weeks before I ultimately got the offer. Um,
Yeah, most people don't think about the job search until after they graduate,
right.
and they lost all that time that they could have had to build this network.
And what's funny is like, I actually, the guy that I was my connection at my current company, I had my first call with him before Tech Elevator even started. So I'll just kind of read what my message was, if that's okay, just because it's interesting.
Yep.
Um, I said, "Hello, name. Thanks for connecting. I'm pivoting into fintech and starting a full-time coding bootcamp in a few weeks. The end goal is to work on financial planning software at a company like XYZ." I put the like specific name of their company and then other companies I would want to
Mhm.
work at. I said, "Would you have 30 minutes to hop on a call and tell me a little bit about more about what you do and share any advice you may have for me?" And he was awesome, and he still is awesome. He's my coworker now, but we had like 5 or 6 calls throughout Tech Elevator where I was like updating him on the projects that I was working on, what I was learning. And that was kind of an opportunity for me to show like almost like a stand up, like your daily stand up. Like every 2 weeks, I would put in my calendar, like send him a message on LinkedIn to update him on what I'm learning.
The building the network effect is like developing relationships, and if you're just sending these one communication out and then not following up, like you're missing on like the growth of that lead.
And it also shows like your ability to do the things that you're saying that you're going to do, which is like important in any role. Um,
And it almost becomes like an informal mentor. That contact that you have is telling you about that company's tech stack, the problems that they're facing, and probably giving you advice on like what technologies in addition you may need to learn, or what have you. So instead of graduating with this kind of cookie cutter skill set that most boot camps push out, you instead now have a custom tailored skill set and maybe even a portfolio project, built entirely around, a potential opportunity.
Yeah, that was the thing that ultimately landed me the job, um, was I got to know, like, what their tech stack was, and the big language they use on the back end is Python, and that wasn't taught at all in my boot camp. So I just started, like, learning that on my own, and I actually decided to build my side project in that tech stack using Python, um, which they thought was really impressive. It showed that I can learn and I can learn quickly. And kind of like my final interview was they said, okay, you have this like Python CI application. That's cool. But like, we want to see you implement it into like a full stack application. So I used like Postgres and JavaScript to build like a full stack application. Um, and I put like 100 hours into that project. Um, and I only did that because it was like a really warm, hot lead and I thought it would pay off. But like I see that sometimes on LinkedIn, people are like, well, if they want you to spend more than 5 hours on the project, then they're scamming you. Don't do it. But it's like the market's so bad right now. Like you have to be able to do things to differentiate yourself. And like ultimately, like they didn't have access to my code base. So it's not like they were trying to yank my code. Ultimately, if that didn't work out, I still had a sweet Python full stack project
Yeah,
to talk about.
yeah. I see the same content online. People complaining about these take-home assessments that take any amount of time. Those are actually my favorite for the same reason as you. Most people will either see that take-home assignment and say, "Oh no, I'm not going to do it." Well, that eliminates that from them from the competition. There's another group of people that'll just do the minimum. They'll put in the 1 hour, 2 hours that they recommend that completes the assignment and moves on. It is the easiest way for you to go above and beyond and show that you are, a passionate, thoughtful, forward-thinking software engineer. 5 hours, 10 hours, whatever. Better to put the time into an actual, warm lead or opportunity versus just, iterating on a side project that probably nobody's going to look at. So I think you had the right mindset going into that.
Yeah, and like it was a risk, right? Because I directed a lot of time and energy to that. Um, but ultimately, like I just had to trust like my instinct that it was worthwhile putting the time into that.
I mean, worst case scenario, you're a better developer and you could always put that like on your GitHub or whatever and use that as a portfolio project now.
Yep, exactly.
It just gives content and more experience.
And one of the other thing is like the nice thing about take home is like you're not in a crunch for time. It's not like they're like stand in front of a whiteboard when you're really nervous and like solve
Mhm.
this algorithm problem. Like
Yeah, you can use Google, ChatGPT. The whole suite of tools are available to you. You can use the IDE with the extensions and plugins that you like.
so,
That's kind of my big gripe whenever I had to do a live coding session. You're doing some like web-based IDE that has no IntelliSense or like autocomplete and like it's very difficult for me for the same reasons you described. So I want to dig into that relationship you developed here a little bit more. So you sent that initial communication, and the response was obviously positive. In these follow-ups that you did, how did you turn him into, oh gosh, a promoter or
a
whatever?
booster.
That last term, the booster, yeah. How did you? I guess what am I trying to say? So many people are not willing to invest in junior developers, and the market. I assume he was, being contacted by other people. Like, how did you turn him into a booster, or is he just naturally a very positive and supportive person?
Yes to that. Like he's a great person, very supportive. I mean, the company also had a junior development role that they were hiring for, um, which obviously helps. And like anyone that's doing this approach can look for companies that have junior development roles as part of their criteria. Um, but he was naturally really helpful. But then also like what made me stand out was I like leveraged my previous experience. Like I had actually used their software product at my old job, um, which is really a big deal because like I kind of understand how the customers think and act. Um, and ultimately, I think that really that's another big point is to leverage any prior experience that you have, even if it's not professional experience, even if it's just an area of interest.
Yeah, because then instead of when you change careers completely throwing away all of that year of experience, you now can bring that to the table as a differentiator. So, as far as this opportunity identification, I want to keep talking about the very early steps here, if that's all
Yep.
right, because I feel like most juniors I work with, it's getting the interview, right? It's not even like the behavioral, the culture fit, or even the technical interview. It's just getting the first interview is the biggest struggle. So identifying this company, and you are identifying specifically companies that had an overlap with your finance experience. How did you find those? Like, I'm just thinking, you Google finance or fintech near me, or is there a specific search you're doing on LinkedIn? Like, how are you identifying these companies?
Yeah, for me, it was like I had a lot of experience in the industry, so I just knew like, oh, this would be a sweet company to work for. This would be a sweet company to work for. But I recognize that that's not everyone's experience. So like I was talking to a teacher, a former teacher who was learning to code, and we were kind of talking about this process. And I was asking her like, well, what companies could you do this method with? And like she was able to answer that question better than I could for her. But like company like education, online learning platforms came to mind, like textbook companies, McGraw-Hill, those sort of companies came to mind. Duolingo learning applications came to mind. So really, it's like the person will be able to answer that question better than anyone else. Like what type of
Mhm.
companies are they have relevant interest or experience in?
Yeah. I like the focus on you being the advocate for yourself. Like, you are finding these companies because the knowledge is in you to go find what you think would be the best overlap. Because I feel like a lot of people rely on the boot camp to kind of do a lot of that advocacy for them. One, they don't start networking until very late, and then two, they rely on the career services of that boot camp to find them work. When, at least in the current market, boot camps are struggling with placement.
Yeah.
So you need to, independently step away from the formal curriculum they're teaching, which I'm sure is great, but you need to go and be an advocate for yourself in the market. Nobody is out there to save you. You have to go and save yourself.
Yeah. And like the company that I worked for, um, I knew was a really highly reputable company that was like creating a great product because I used it, but not a single person in my boot camp even knew what the company was. Because every other job that funnels through boot camp is like you, your 50 classmates, and then 25 alumni who are still looking for work are all applying for.
Yeah, and it's either that or it's everybody's going to the same job boards, Indeed, LinkedIn, doing the same search, entry level software engineer, junior software engineer, and everybody's applying to the results that come back. You need some way to identify opportunities that are, not on those platforms. Uh, I mean, you could, but you are now competing with thousands of other developers, and you have to be definitely on your A game.
Yeah, and I will say I think this method works really well with smaller companies, um, because I reached out to some of the bigger companies, like big finance company players, and I was like, "Oh, I'd love to get on the phone, just chat about your role, what
Yeah,
you do," and like
yeah,
nothing, crickets. Um, and like ultimately,
yeah.
they're like,
They're being swamped.
yeah, well,
Yeah,
they're like applied through the formal process.
yeah.
But with smaller companies, it's
So
like a name to a face. You get to actually kind of build those relationships.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, my first tech job, I was part-time, but it was maybe 20 people in the company, as a whole, and I think that was one L to get in there. So how long, did you, look for work? Or did, because of this network that you set up with this fantastic booster, uh, did you jump in, right away?
Yeah, so I actually like had the offer signed before I graduated, um,
Nice then.
which was just I was really fortunate to have it all work out like that because I think like
Did you even have to finish the program, or did you have to, like, leave to
I finished the program.
go work?
I don't know
Okay,
if I would
okay.
have had to, but
Yeah.
like that's just like motivation for people out there to start networking early. Like I was the only one that graduated from my boot camp with a an offer signed. Um,
Mhm.
and like I got to go travel for 2 weeks instead of like
Yeah, you're not
stressed out.
stressed trying to find a job, and it's coming.
So just like move that amount of time it takes forward, start earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a true principle. I know we're talking about boot camp specifically, but I would say even as a self-taught developer, there's probably a stage where you don't know what you're doing and you're still definitely learning. You can still network and look for opportunities before you are, quote unquote, ready to apply. Or if you're doing, a 4-year college degree route, even, you can still look for work before you graduate. I mean, I graduated with a 4-year degree, and I was surprised at the number of people who still took 6 months, 9 months to find work because they were so focused on getting, their 4.0 in school that they hadn't even thought about, what comes next. So at a certain point, you're good enough in your skill set, and you just need to be focusing on putting yourself out there like you were doing.
Yep. And start before everyone else because then the competition's reduced as well.
There you go. There you go. Well, great story. Thank you so much for sharing that, Andrew. Before we wrap up, though, any shout outs to specific job search tools or people, organizations that you think really helped you in your job search that you think others should be aware of?
I would just promote find local things to get involved with. Like in Columbus, I know I've been to Columbus Code and Coffee, but there's a ton of different great local things to get involved with to start making those connections.
And that's just like meetup.com. You're
Yep.
finding these, I
Yep.
assume. Okay. You also called out the book, The 2-Hour Job Search. I'll include links to, Meetup and that book as well in the show notes to dive a little bit deeper there.
Awesome.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for joining. It was a great conversation. And thank you for those that are listening. We will see you all next time.
Yeah. Thank you, Eric. It was great.
Thanks for tuning in to the Junior Jobs Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to like and subscribe as that helps us reach more developers in need. And don't forget to check the show notes for details on today's sponsor and other job search services that we provide.